She didn't know the entire program was attached to my professional license. When they put someone new in my position, all it took was one click to suspend every grant. They thought I'd sit quietly after being stabbed in the back. I pulled the entire system out from under them and left them to explain themselves to the government. My name is Dr. Rachel Meyer. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I was the director of an innovative education program at Forest Heights School District in Colorado. For 6 years, I built from nothing an integrated STEM program for at-risk students, one that was recognized at the state level and secured over $1 million in funding. I was the only person managing the entire grant process, reporting, business connections, and obtaining special permits from the Department of Education. This is the story of how I was betrayed and how I took back what was rightfully mine. The Monday morning started like any other. I arrived at my office at 7:15 a.m., as I had done for the past 6 years. My morning routine never varied: check emails, review the day's meetings, and take 15 minutes to drink my coffee while going through progress reports from our program facilitators. The Forest Heights STEM Pathways program, my brainchild, was running smoothly in its 6th year of operation. What had begun as a desperate attempt to prevent dropouts among our most vulnerable high school population had evolved into a state-recognized success story, with over $1 million in annual funding and partnerships with 12 major technology companies in the Denver metro area. I remember feeling particularly optimistic that morning. The deputy principal position had been vacant for 3 months, and the general consensus among staff was that I would be the natural choice to fill it. After all, I had transformed our district from an underperforming liability into a model for STEM education across the state. Our graduation rates for at-risk students had increased by 37% since I implemented the program. College acceptances were up, and we had secured internships at prestigious tech firms for students who might otherwise have dropped out entirely. The school board meeting was scheduled for 9:00 a.m., and I expected it to be a formality. I'd already been unofficially congratulated by 2 board members. I spent some time reviewing my acceptance speech, making sure to acknowledge the collaborative effort while highlighting my vision for expanding the program's reach. At 8:55 a.m., I walked into the conference room, greeting colleagues with the quiet confidence of someone about to receive well-deserved recognition. Principal Dana Whitmore was already seated at the head of the table, shuffling through papers with unusual intensity. I noticed she avoided making eye contact as I entered, but I thought little of it at the time. "Good morning, everyone," Dana began as the clock struck 9. "Thank you for joining us for this important announcement. As you know, we've been in the process of selecting a new deputy principal for Forest Heights, and after careful consideration, I'm pleased to announce our decision." I straightened in my chair, adjusting my blazer slightly. This was the culmination of 6 years of dedication. "Please join me in welcoming our new deputy principal, Ashley Kramer." The room fell silent for a moment before scattered applause broke out. I sat frozen, my face locked in what I hoped resembled a smile but felt more like a grimace. Ashley Kramer. The name wasn't even on the short list of candidates. In fact, I'd never heard it mentioned in any administrative discussions. Then the door opened, and in walked a woman I vaguely recognized from Dana's social media photos. Blonde, mid-30s, with an overly enthusiastic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She wore an ill-fitting suit that seemed hastily purchased for the occasion. "I'm so excited to join the Forest Heights family," Ashley gushed, her voice carrying a slight southern drawl. "Dana has told me so much about this wonderful school, and I can't wait to bring my expertise to your amazing programs." My mind raced as I tried to process what was happening. Dana and Ashley exchanged a look of familiar complicity, and suddenly, the pieces fell into place. This wasn't a professional decision, this was old-fashioned nepotism. I later learned that Ashley and Dana had been sorority sisters at UCLA, and had maintained their friendship over the years. Ashley had an MBA in sports management and had been fired from her previous position at a minor league baseball team for chronic tardiness and mismanagement of staff. She had no educational credentials, no administrative experience in schools, and absolutely no qualification to oversee a complex educational program like ours. I sat through the remainder of the meeting in a state of numb disbelief. Various colleagues cast sympathetic glances my way, but no one spoke up. The politics of school administration meant challenging the principal publicly would be career suicide, and everyone knew it. When Dana called on me to say a few words about our exciting new direction, I managed to stand and deliver a bland, professional statement about teamwork and adaptation. Inside, however, my mind was already calculating, planning, and preparing for what would come next. As the meeting adjourned, Dana caught my arm. "Rachel, I hope you understand. Ashley brings a fresh perspective from outside education. Sometimes we need new eyes." Her expression held no guilt, only the serene confidence of someone who believed her position made her untouchable. I smiled tightly. "Of course, change is part of growth." I extracted my arm from her grip and walked away, my heels clicking purposefully on the linoleum floor. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and my laptop open. 6 years of work, thousands of hours, countless weekends sacrificed, all of it disregarded in an instant. The familiar burn of injustice rose in my throat, but I pushed it down. Emotion wouldn't serve me now. Strategy would. I opened my email and began composing a resignation letter. Unlike the passionate, detailed communications I usually crafted, this one contained exactly 12 words. "I resign from my position, effective immediately. Sincerely, Dr. Rachel Meyer, Ph.D." I hit send at 11:47 p.m., knowing it would be waiting in Dana's inbox when she arrived the next morning. Then I opened a new document and began listing everything, absolutely everything, that only I controlled in our program's infrastructure. By 3 a.m., I had compiled an exhaustive inventory of my professional leverage system login credentials that only I possessed, a flash drive containing all compliance data, sponsorship contracts with my name as the sole point of contact, and most importantly, my professional educational license that had been used to maintain all financial support and academic waivers for the program. What Dana and the board had failed to realize, or perhaps had never bothered to learn, was that the entire STEM Pathways program operated under special educational permits that were explicitly tied to my professional credentials. When the program was established, we had applied for an innovative education waiver from the State Department of Education. These waivers, which allowed us to deviate from standard curriculum requirements, were granted based on my educational background, research experience, and professional standing. My signature and license number appeared on every official document. The multi-million-dollar grants we'd secured, all contingent on the program being overseen by a qualified educational specialist with my specific certifications. The 12 corporate partnerships, the contracts named me personally as the program director, the special academic credits students received valid only under my professional supervision. I wasn't just a replaceable administrator. I was the legal and regulatory foundation upon which the entire program was built. As dawn broke, I finished my final cup of coffee and drove to the school. It was 5:30 a.m., early enough that the building would be empty except for perhaps a custodian or two. I used my key card to enter through the side door and went directly to my office, methodically. I began removing everything that belonged to me or was tied to my professional identity. I downloaded all my files onto an external hard drive and then wiped them from the school's server. I collected the original hard copies of all grant applications and reports. I removed the flash drive containing all compliance data from the locked drawer in my desk. I gathered the binders containing all corporate partnership agreements in their place. I left pristine, empty folders labeled with the names of each document set. I wasn't stealing, I was simply taking what was rightfully mine. The school still had digital copies of most documents on their main server, but without the context and the specific knowledge of how everything fit together, they would be nearly useless. The last thing I did was remove the framed copy of my professional license from the wall. As I placed it carefully in my bag, I felt a moment of profound clarity. They hadn't just rejected me for a promotion, they had fundamentally failed to understand the architecture of the very program they claimed to value. I left the building at 6:45 a.m. Just as the early arriving teachers were beginning to pull into the parking lot, No one questioned me carrying boxes to my car. It was a common enough sight in a school environment. By 7:00 a.m., I was driving away from Forest Heights for what I knew would be the last time. Once home, I made 3 important phone calls. The first was to the State Department of Education, officially notifying them that I was no longer affiliated with the Forest Heights STEM Pathways program and formally withdrawing my professional license from all associated permits and waivers. The second call was to the Federal Grant Administration Office, informing them of my resignation and requesting that my name be removed from all grant responsibility documents. The third call was to Jefferson Academy, a prestigious private school across town that had been trying to recruit me for years. By noon, the dominoes had begun to fall. The State Department of Education immediately placed the STEM Pathways program on at-risk status, pending review of their operational permits. The Federal Grant Administration froze all funding disbursements until new qualification documentation could be provided, and I had a lunch meeting scheduled with the headmaster of Jefferson Academy for the following day. I didn't send any threatening messages. I didn't publicly denounce Dana or Ashley. I didn't contact a single parent or student. I simply removed myself and my professional credentials from the equation and let the system respond accordingly. The next 3 weeks unfolded exactly as I had anticipated. Initially, Dana and Ashley attempted to maintain the illusion that everything was proceeding normally. They sent out the usual weekly newsletter, held the scheduled parent-teacher meetings, and even announced an expansion of the program for the following academic year. But behind the scenes, chaos was erupting. The first indication came in the form of an email from the state's educational compliance officer requesting immediate verification of the qualified supervisor for the program. When Dana replied with Ashley's name and credentials, she received an automated response indicating that an MBA in sports management did not meet the minimum requirements for oversight of a specialized educational program. Next came emails from corporate partners, asking who would be handling their intern placements now that I had departed. When Ashley attempted to introduce herself as the new contact person, several companies requested copies of her educational research background and teaching certifications documents she obviously couldn't provide. The real crisis hit when the quarterly disbursement of grant funds failed to appear in the school's accounts. The financial officer contacted the Federal Grant Administration, only to be informed that all funding had been suspended pending verification of proper program oversight. Parents began calling, concerned about rumors that the program might be in jeopardy. Students worried about their promised internships and specialized college credits. Local education reporters, always attuned to potential controversy, started making inquiries. By the third week, internal communications had devolved into panic. A staff member who still maintained contact with me forwarded an email thread in which Dana was frantically directing Ashley to find Rachel's files and figure out how she handled the compliance reports. Another email mentioned an emergency meeting with the school board to address the STEM program situation. That meeting, I later learned, was nothing short of catastrophic. Representatives from the State Department of Education and the Educational Licensing Committee attended, along with 2 federal grant officers. Dana attempted to frame the situation as a transition challenge, suggesting that I had failed to properly document my processes. Her narrative collapsed when a grant auditor interrupted. "Dr. Meyer CC'd you on every report submission for the past 6 years. I have the email receipts right here." He proceeded to display a spreadsheet showing every report I had filed, with Dana's email clearly listed in the recipient field of each one. She had simply never bothered to read them. One of the state representatives asked directly, "Who is currently qualified to oversee this program according to state regulation ED 5729.3. Dana looked to Ashley, who remained silent, visibly uncomfortable. "We're in the process of identifying a suitable candidate," Dana finally admitted. "Until that person is identified, properly credentialed, and approved by this committee, the program remains in non-compliance," the representative stated flatly. "All associated academic waivers are suspended effective immediately." The grant officers were equally direct. Federal educational grant regulations require continuous qualified oversight without an approved program director meeting the specified credentials. All funds will remain frozen and may be subject to reclamation if compliance is not restored within 30 days. By this point, my name was being mentioned repeatedly as the architect and essential component of the program. Dana's attempts to minimize my role only highlighted her fundamental misunderstanding of what I had built. While Forest Heights was imploding, I was rebuilding. My lunch with Jefferson Academy's headmaster had evolved into a series of planning meetings. I presented a comprehensive proposal for a new program, the FuturePath Scholars Initiative, that would build on my previous work while expanding into new areas. The private school setting offered greater flexibility and resources, along with the autonomy I needed to fully realize my educational vision. Jefferson Academy didn't just match my previous salary, they offered me a substantial increase. Along with the title of Executive Director of Innovative Education, they provided dedicated staff, a generous budget for program development, and most importantly, complete authority over my department. Within 2 weeks, I had secured initial funding of $1.4 million through a combination of private donations and educational grants. My reputation in the educational community and with corporate partners made the transition remarkably smooth. Many of the companies that had partnered with Forest Heights eagerly shifted their support to my new initiative, relieved to be working with me again. The formal announcement of the FuturePath Scholars Initiative coincided almost exactly with Forest Heights' public relations nightmare. Local news covered both stories, me standing proudly in front of Jefferson Academy's impressive campus, discussing innovative educational approaches, while across town, Dana faced an angry school board and concerned parents demanding explanations for the collapse of a once successful program. Reports filtered back to me that Ashley had stopped coming to work entirely. Citing stress-related health concerns, Dana was facing a vote of no confidence from the school board, and students from the STEM Pathways program were contacting Jefferson Academy to inquire about transferring. I took no pleasure in their difficulties, but I felt vindicated. I hadn't actively sabotaged anything, I had simply removed myself from a situation where my value was unrecognized, taking with me the professional credentials that were rightfully mine. The final chapter came 6 weeks after my resignation. Dana was removed from her position following a contentious public meeting where parents and local educational advocates expressed their outrage over the mismanagement of the school's most successful program. The school board issued a public statement acknowledging serious administrative errors in leadership transition and program oversight. Forest Heights lost all special funding and had to indefinitely suspend the program I had built. Several of the most promising students transferred to Jefferson Academy on scholarships I helped arrange. 3 of my former colleagues joined my team at the new school. I never sent threatening messages. I never publicly criticized Forest Heights. I simply removed my name from their system and let the consequences unfold naturally. 1 month into the launch of FuturePath, I stood greeting parents at our first community open house. The event was a resounding success, with students enthusiastically demonstrating projects and corporate representatives discussing internship opportunities. As the evening wound down, a father approached me, his daughter one of my former students from Forest Heights by his side. "Dr. Meyer," he said, extending his hand, "I want to thank you for not letting them take away what you created. These kids need people who won't give up on them, even when the system fails." His daughter nodded in agreement, her recent acceptance to MIT's engineering program a testament to the opportunities my program had provided. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of professional satisfaction. "Some things are worth fighting for," I replied. Sometimes the best response to disrespect isn't confrontation, it's simply taking your value elsewhere. As they walked away, I looked around at my new domain. The classrooms were filled with engaged students. The hallways displayed innovative projects. The atmosphere buzzed with intellectual curiosity and possibility. Everything I had built before, I was building again, only better, stronger, and with the recognition I deserved. Dana and Ashley had made a critical error. They had seen me as just another administrative cog, easily replaced by a friendly face. What they failed to understand was that I wasn't just running a program, I was the program, my education, my credentials, my relationships, My vision, these weren't assets that belonged to Forest Heights. They belonged to me. They had replaced me with a friend. So I took the entire program and funding with me, not through theft or sabotage, but simply by reclaiming what was rightfully mine, my professional identity, my vision, and my right to be valued for my contributions. The lesson was clear. Though I doubted Dana would ever fully grasp it, true educational leadership isn't about titles or authority. It's about building something of value that helps students succeed. And when that value is disrespected, sometimes the most powerful response is to simply walk away and build something even better elsewhere. I'd given Forest Heights 6 years of my professional life. Now I was giving myself the opportunity I deserved. As I locked up my office that evening, I felt no regret, no lingering resentment, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had stood up for myself in the most effective way possible, not with angry words or public accusations, but with the simple, irrefutable evidence of my own worth. My new office at Jefferson Academy had a large window overlooking the campus quad. I'd placed my framed credentials and licenses prominently on the wall, not out of vanity, but as a reminder of the professional authority I'd earned through years of education and dedicated service. These weren't just pieces of paper. They were the foundation of my ability to create educational opportunities for students who needed them most. As I settled into my role at Jefferson Academy, I occasionally heard updates about Forest Heights. The school board had hired a new principal to replace Dana, someone with a strong background in educational administration. They were attempting to rebuild the STEM program, but without the established partnerships and grant funding, progress was slow. Several teachers had resigned. Citing the unstable environment, enrollment had declined as parents sought more reliable educational opportunities for their children. Ashley had apparently moved to another state. Her brief educational career ended before it truly began. I felt a moment of sympathy for her. She had been a pawn in Dana's game of favoritism, placed in a position for which she was profoundly unqualified. Her failure had been inevitable from the moment she accepted a role she couldn't possibly fulfill. 6 months into my tenure at Jefferson, the Future Path Scholars Initiative was thriving. We had expanded to include middle school students, creating a continuous pathway of STEM education from 6th through 12th grade. Our corporate partnerships had grown to include 23 companies, offering internships, mentorship programs, and equipment donations. Our first cohort of seniors had achieved a 100% college acceptance rate, with over 80% receiving substantial scholarships. The State Department of Education had approached me about developing a model for other schools to implement similar programs. I was scheduled to speak at the National Education Innovation Conference. A major educational foundation had awarded us an additional $800,000 grant to expand our reach to underserved communities. All of this success stemmed from the same educational philosophy and programmatic structure I had developed at Forest Heights, with one crucial difference: at Jefferson Academy, my contributions were recognized, valued, and rewarded. I wasn't fighting for resources or struggling to maintain momentum against administrative indifference. I was empowered to fulfill my vision with the full support of the institution. One afternoon, as I was reviewing applications for the following year's program expansion, my assistant notified me that a visitor was waiting to see me. I glanced at my calendar, noting no appointments scheduled for that time, but agreed to a brief meeting. To my surprise, it was Robert Chen, the chairman of the Forest Heights School Board. He entered my office with the hesitant demeanor of someone aware they were on uncertain ground. "Dr. Meyer," he began, settling into the chair across from me. "You've created something remarkable here." I thanked him politely, waiting for him to reveal the purpose of his unexpected visit. "I won't waste your time," he continued after a moment of awkward silence. "The situation at Forest Heights has been challenging since your departure. We've realized some significant errors were made in how the administration handled the transition." I maintained a neutral expression, offering neither agreement nor dismissal. "The board has authorized me to discuss the possibility of your return," he finally stated. "We're prepared to offer you the principal position, with complete autonomy over the STEM program and a substantial increase in compensation." For a moment, I was speechless. The irony was almost too perfect. They had discarded me in favor of nepotism, and now they wanted me to return and save them from the consequences of their own decisions. "That's a generous offer," I replied carefully. "But I'm afraid it comes too late. I've built something here that I'm deeply committed to. The students in our program are thriving, and I have no intention of abandoning them." Robert nodded, seeming unsurprised by my response. "I understand, but I felt I needed to make the attempt. What happened was regrettable." "Regrettable," I repeated, the word insufficient for the professional disrespect I had experienced. "Mr. Chen, what happened wasn't just an unfortunate circumstance. It was a fundamental failure to understand the value of educational expertise. Dana replaced me with an unqualified friend because she didn't comprehend what my role actually entailed. That level of mismanagement suggests systemic problems that go beyond a single poor decision." He sighed heavily. "You're right. Of course, the board should have exercised more oversight. We became complacent because your program was running so smoothly. We didn't realize how much of that success was directly attributable to your specific expertise. That's often the case with excellent administrators," I observed. "When we do our jobs well, the complexity becomes invisible. The challenges are resolved before they escalate into visible problems. But that doesn't mean the work isn't happening." Robert stood, recognizing that his mission had failed. "For what it's worth, I believe Forest Heights made the greatest mistake in its institutional history by losing you. The students are the ones who have suffered most from that error." As he reached the door, I called after him. "Mr. Chen," he turned back expectantly. "I'm developing a professional training program for educational administrators focusing on program sustainability and proper oversight of specialized educational initiatives. If Forest Heights would like to send representatives, I'd be happy to reserve spaces." A small smile crossed his face as he recognized my subtle message. "I think that would be extremely beneficial. I'll make sure our new leadership team attends." After he left, I sat for a long time contemplating the journey that had brought me to this point. There was no vindictive satisfaction in Forest Heights' struggles, only a profound appreciation for the professional environment I now enjoyed. I hadn't needed to actively seek revenge or orchestrate their downfall. Simply removing my expertise had been sufficient to reveal how essential that expertise had been. The following week, I received a large envelope in the mail. Inside was a formal letter of apology from the Forest Heights School Board, acknowledging the invaluable contributions I had made to the district and expressing sincere regret for the circumstances of my departure. Accompanying the letter was a plaque recognizing my 6 years of service and the positive impact I had made on countless students' lives. I placed the plaque on a shelf in my office, not prominently displayed but not hidden away either. It served as a reminder of an important lesson: true professional value doesn't diminish when it's unrecognized.